Hey everyone, I'm Ryan J. Wells. I want to talk about something that many of us struggle with, something that weighs on the heart but often feels hard to define: emotionally detaching from someone. Picture this. It's like holding onto a rope that's fraying in your hands. Every time you pull harder to keep the connection, the more it cuts into your palms, leaving you raw and drained. At some point, you have to ask yourself, is it worth holding on if it's hurting me this much? I've been there myself. It's not easy to recognize when a relationship, whether with a partner, friend, or even a family member, starts to chip away at your peace. We often feel guilty, loyal, or afraid to let go. But here's the truth. Letting go doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you start caring about yourself too. Before we dive in, if you find value in this message, I invite you to subscribe and join this community where we strive to grow together. Only 15% of viewers are subscribed, so if this resonates with you, subscribing ensures you won't miss content designed to elevate your life. In today's video, I'll share with you 5 key rules that helped me, and many others, learn to emotionally detach in a way that is both healthy and empowering. Let me know in the comments if any of this resonates with you, or if you've experienced something similar. We're all in this together. Now, let's dive into the first rule: recognizing when emotional detachment is necessary. One of the hardest things to do is admit to yourself when a relationship is no longer serving you. Imagine this. You're sitting in a room filled with noise. Not the comforting hum of conversation, but a constant buzzing that fills every corner, leaving no space for peace. That's what it feels like when you're emotionally entangled with someone whose presence drains you rather than uplifts you. The problem is, we often grow so used to the noise that we forget what silence, what peace, feels like. Recognizing when to emotionally detach begins with paying attention to how you feel after interacting with this person. If you find yourself exhausted, anxious, or constantly replaying conversations in your mind, it's a red flag. Your body and mind are trying to tell you something. It's time to create some emotional distance. I know it's not always clear when to take this step. You might feel loyal to this person or even guilty about stepping back. But here's what I've learned. Just because you care about someone doesn't mean you have to sacrifice your own well-being for their sake. There comes a point where loyalty to yourself must come first. Actionable tip. Take a moment to reflect on the emotional patterns in this relationship. Ask yourself, how do I feel after spending time with this person? Do I feel lighter or heavier? This small act of self-awareness is the first step toward recognizing when emotional detachment is necessary. Think of this process like carrying a backpack. Every interaction with this person adds weight, sometimes subtle, sometimes heavy, but you rarely stop to notice how much you're carrying. Eventually, that weight slows you down. It's time to take off the backpack and examine what you've been holding onto. Not everything deserves to be carried forward. As the saying goes, you can't pour from an empty cup. When your emotional reserves are running low, it's your signal to step back and refill. Now that we've recognized the need for emotional detachment, let's talk about how to set the boundaries that will protect your peace, without sacrificing compassion. Rule 2. Set clear boundaries. Once you've recognized that emotional detachment is necessary, the next step is learning how to set boundaries. Boundaries that protect your emotional space without closing your heart. Boundaries aren't about shutting people out or punishing them. They're about defining the space where you can thrive. Think of them as the lines that outline a beautiful garden. You allow in sunlight, fresh air, and nurturing relationships, but you protect your garden from the weeds, those behaviors or interactions that suffocate your peace. Setting boundaries can be uncomfortable, especially if you're someone who naturally wants to help, fix, or accommodate others. You might feel guilty or worry about being seen as selfish. But here's something I want you to remember. Boundaries are not barriers. They're bridges. They are bridges to healthier relationships, not only with others, but also with yourself. Setting boundaries isn't an act of rejection. It's an act of self-respect. Maybe that boundary looks like saying no to certain requests or limiting how much time you spend with someone. Maybe it's as simple as deciding which conversations you're no longer willing to have. Conversations that leave you feeling drained or triggered. What's important is that your boundaries are clear, kind, and firm. Actionable step. Think of one boundary you can set this week. Maybe it's a small shift, like limiting your time with someone who often leaves you feeling drained, or avoiding topics that trigger unnecessary stress. Take one step toward reclaiming your emotional space. Imagine a garden full of flowers you've worked hard to grow. Boundaries are the fence that keeps your garden safe, not from everything, but from what could damage it. Weeds may still try to creep in, but with strong boundaries you protect the beauty inside. Brené Brown says, "Daring to set boundaries is about having the courage to love ourselves, even when we risk disappointing others." Setting boundaries is an act of courage and self-compassion. As you start creating these boundaries, you might notice that space begin to open up in your life. Space for you to focus on what truly matters, your own growth, your own happiness. This brings us to our third rule, refocusing on yourself. Rule 3. Focus on your own growth and happiness. Once you've set boundaries, something beautiful starts to happen. You create space for yourself. Often, when we're emotionally entangled with someone, we lose sight of our own needs. It's like being in a dense forest where you can't see the path because you're so focused on guiding someone else. But when you take a step back, you begin to notice the light filtering through the trees, and suddenly, the path ahead becomes clear. This is your time to refocus on your own growth and happiness. And here's the truth. You deserve to thrive. When we are too wrapped up in someone else's emotions or problems, it's easy to forget our own dreams, desires, and well-being. But emotional detachment isn't just about pulling away from others. It's about pulling toward yourself. Focusing on yourself doesn't mean you're selfish. It means you understand that in order to give your best to the world, you need to be at your best. You can't pour from an empty cup. Prioritizing your own happiness and personal growth is essential if you want to show up fully, not just in your relationships, but in every aspect of your life. Actionable step. Take some time this week to do something that lights you up. Reconnect with a hobby, a passion, or even a simple act of self-care that you've neglected. It doesn't have to be grand. Maybe it's a morning walk, journaling, or spending time on something that sparks joy. As you focus on your own happiness, you'll find that you have more energy, more clarity, and more love to give. Think of yourself as a tree. When you're too focused on someone else, it's like pouring water only on their roots, neglecting your own. Over time, your leaves begin to wither. But when you start nourishing yourself, watering your own roots, you'll see that your branches grow stronger, your leaves greener. Focusing on your growth allows you to flourish and offer shade to those around you without losing your own vitality. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." When you focus on your own joy, passions, and well-being, you cultivate a life filled with meaning. As you begin to nurture your own growth, you may notice the need to let go of something else, the need to control. Let's talk about that next, in Rule 4, Let Go of Control. Rule 4, Let Go of Control. One of the hardest lessons to learn in any relationship is that you can't control anyone else's thoughts, actions, or emotions, no matter how much you care about them. It's like trying to steer a boat that's not yours, exhausting yourself, only to realize you're drifting farther from your own shore. Letting go of control isn't just necessary, it's freeing. It allows you to reclaim your energy and stop pouring it into things beyond your reach. If you're naturally a caretaker or someone who wants to solve problems, it's easy to feel responsible for someone else's happiness. You might think, if I just do this one more thing, they'll change. Or, if I don't help them, who will? But here's the truth. You cannot change or fix another person. You can offer guidance, you can support them, but their choices, their growth, their happiness, it's in their hands, not yours. Letting go of control means trusting that they are capable of navigating their own life. And perhaps even more importantly, it means trusting that you deserve to focus on navigating your own life. By trying to control the outcomes in someone else's life, you're giving away the power you need to create your own happiness. Actionable tip. The next time you feel the urge to step in and fix a situation for someone else, pause and ask yourself, is this truly my responsibility? Sometimes the greatest act of love is allowing someone to walk their own path, even if it means they stumble along the way. Think of control like holding sand in your hand. The harder you squeeze, the faster the grains slip through your fingers. But when you open your hand and allow the sand to rest lightly, it stays. In the same way, when you release your need to control, you'll find peace comes naturally. Lao Tzu beautifully reminds us, by letting go, it all gets done. Trust that when you release control, both you and the other person are free to grow in the way you each need to. As you begin to release control, you also begin to create space for something new, for your own peace, joy, and even new connections to come into your life. Which leads us to our final rule, giving yourself permission to move on. Rule 5. Give yourself permission to move on. Perhaps the most transformative part of emotional detachment is granting yourself the permission to move on, to release the attachment that once held you back and embrace the future. Moving on doesn't necessarily mean cutting someone out of your life entirely. Sometimes it's about changing how much of yourself you give to the relationship, or redefining its boundaries. It's about letting go of the emotional weight that no longer serves you, so you can make room for what does. Imagine a door you've been standing in front of, hesitating to close because of the memories or hopes tied to it. But beyond that door, another one waits to open, one that leads to new experiences, opportunities, and connections. The act of moving on is not about erasing the past or pretending the person or relationship didn't matter. It's about honoring what was while allowing yourself the freedom to step into what could be. Giving yourself permission to move on is an act of self-love. It's acknowledging that your emotional well-being is worth prioritizing and that you deserve to have relationships and experiences that uplift you, not drain you. It's okay to grieve the change, to feel sadness or loss, but know that every step you take forward brings you closer to a healthier, more fulfilling life. Actionable step. Take a moment to visualize what your life would look like after you've emotionally detached in a healthy way. Picture yourself lighter, with more time and energy to focus on the people, passions, and dreams that fill you up. What would that feel like? Write down one thing you can do this week to start moving toward that vision, whether it's spending more time on a hobby you love or limiting your interaction with the person you need space from. Think of moving on as a ship setting sail. You've been anchored for a long time, tied to the shore of a familiar relationship or situation. But as you untie that rope, you realize the vast ocean of possibilities in front of you. With each step toward your future, you set sail toward the life you've always deserved. Buddha once said, in the end, only three things matter: how much you loved, how gently you lived, and how gracefully you let go of things not meant for you. Moving on is not about rejecting the past. It's about embracing the future with grace and intention. As you give yourself permission to move on, remember that this isn't about loss, it's about gain. You are gaining emotional freedom, space for growth, and the opportunity to build relationships that align with who you are and where you're going. And on the other side of this journey lies the most important connection of all, the one you have with yourself. Emotional detachment isn't easy, but it's one of the most powerful acts of self-care and growth you can embrace. It's not about losing someone. It's about gaining clarity, peace, and a deeper sense of self. As you recognize when detachment is necessary, set boundaries, focus on your own growth, let go of control, and give yourself permission to move on. You're creating the space for relationships that truly nourish you. So if you're on this journey right now, know that you're not alone. Every step you take toward your own well-being is a step toward a more fulfilling life. Let me know in the comments how these steps resonate with you, or share your own experiences of emotional detachment. We're all in this together. And if you found value in this message, I invite you to subscribe and join this community where we strive to grow together. Thank you for joining me today. I'm Ryan J. Wells, and I'll see you next time. Until then, keep trusting yourself, honoring your boundaries, and moving forward with courage and grace.